Okay, so we're going to go back into our Unreal Editor now and have a look at the DMX library system. So we're going to go back into our content drawer. We're going to go back to the content root and create another folder called DMX. I know this may seem a little bit excessive because we've only got a few things in our library at the moment in the contents folder. We could have just had them all at the root, but let's start creating some good habits from the beginning, right? So in DMX, we are going to create anything to do with our DMX attributes on this project. We're going to right click and have a look to see what there is to create. There's a whole library here called DMX with a whole one thing in it called DMX library. Then click on that. We're going to create a new DMX library. I'm just going to call it DMX library because we're only going to have the one. Oh, spell it correctly. And this is going to be where all of the configuration for DMX with the subsystem is going to happen. And I keep using the term DMX subsystem. If you feel like I'm just talking waffle, that's fine. You'll get it very soon. Double click on this and it opens up a new window. Looks a bit uninteresting at the moment because there's not much in it. This is where we create fixtures and patch them. And Unreal's done a really good job in the latest versions of the Unreal Editor in making this much simpler and easier to use. The very first version that came out, I was right there at the beginning learning how to use it, and it was so fiddly. You had to learn how to do everything from scratch, whereas now they've integrated a lot of the features in. So in library settings, we've got the project, a way to get to the project settings in the UI that we were looking at earlier. This is where we were doing our settings, setting up our output ports. So if you still haven't got an output port, create one. Input ports, obviously, if you wanted to actually bring control data into your console. And you can see them here. I've got no input ports, so they're not there. Output ports, I've got ArtNet and it's enabled. Fixture types. Right, we're going to create a fixture. New fixture type. There's only one button to press here, so there's only one thing to do. Click that. DMX entity fixture type. What on earth's that? Right, so we're going to create one called Mania. Because that's what that is. Now here we can import a profile if we have one. I'm going to come back to that in a minute because this is the easiest way to import existing fixtures. But let's be honest, when you're in Unreal and you're building fixtures that are virtual, we don't need to have an actual profile of a real light unless you're trying to visualize what that light would look like for the future. The only benefit is that the lighting desk would have the same profile. What I've done is create a couple of sort of uber lights that can do everything. They have zoom and colors and everything you could ever want, and built a fixture profile on the lighting desk, and that's all I need. I just need one type of light to do anything. Now the only exception to that is that Unreal has designed different light profiles for, say, a wash light, a profile light, LED bars and things, so there is some benefit to doing it. If you were trying to visualize the lighting for an actual show and you knew that you had real lights coming, then you want to use exactly the sort of right light fixture. Now Unreal Engine wasn't designed to be a lighting visualizer to replace WYSIWYG or Depends or anything like that. This is a way of controlling lights inside a game engine, which is really useful if you're like me and you're trying to make metaverse live events, in which case, again, you don't need the real lights. There's no, sorry to name, but Martin or Claypaky branded virtual lights that are better than the other because the laws of physics are all based on an Unreal Engine algorithm. So Mania, we created that fixture, but now we need to start adding attributes to it. So we're going to add a mode first. You can literally follow this path here because you've got green buttons and you can't do anything else. So I can't add a function at the moment. Next thing, add a mode. When you've got one mode, now a lot of lights have many modes. They have 8-bit modes, 16-bit modes. You could create as many modes as you want, extended, standard. I'm just going to leave it as mode, auto channel span. I don't need to do anything else. We've just got the one mode for this light. And now we can add a function. Again, just working your way along, nothing else to change. Add function. The function needs a name and an attribute. Okay, so we've got the attributes that we can affect. These are all things that are built into Unreal as standard algorithms. Now earlier I said if you go back to DMX project settings, in here we've got fixture settings. This is where you can create new categories or you can modify categories. Fixture attributes, you can start to make your own. I'd really suggest you don't at the moment, unless you really know what you're doing with everything else. It's something that will come in time, I'm sure. We're just going to look at a couple of things. We're going to need to build the settings that we need to control this light. Once we've chosen it, we can make a mapping in here, but what we really need is to know what the attributes are for this. So we've gone to the manual, right? Here we go. I've got the manual, I found it online. These are the DMX protocol settings. Now if you're building a fixture on a lighting desk, you still need this. So these are all the settings for each address. Really important. So when I was trying to operate address 1 earlier, I said to you I was loading macros, so that's because I was, anything over the address or the value 101 on address 1 was loading a macro, a standard effect. And when I was controlling intensity, that's a whole range from 0 to 255. If you've got a 16-bit fixture, this is where the patch tool becomes useful, because you don't need to type in 0 to, 36,500 in your value range. You load it in your fixture patch as a 16-bit fixture. We're not going to do that today, but I'll show you where it is. And colour wheels, you've got the range that puts you to the right colour, and you've got splits. In this particular light, there's a fixed colour wheel and a fixed gobo wheel. So address 4 is a gobo wheel, and then 5 and 6 are the pan and tilt. Don't need to worry about the virtual channels. These are the gobo speeds for the gobo wheel. You've actually got, here as you see, you've got colours 0 to 203 are addressing all the colours, but the final sort of 51 addresses there, or value on that address, are for controlling the speed of the clockwise or counterclockwise rotation of the wheel. So we could also set that up, and we'll be doing this in the next lesson. But for now, we can sort of see roughly, 1 is our strobe function. So just leave that for the moment. We're just going to start off simple. 2 is our intensity. So let's just drag it over here so you can see what I'm doing. So 1 is, I might as well put it in, strobe. Where is it? If you can't find it, type it in. Oh, hang on, actually it's labelled shutter, isn't it? Shutter is what we call this, which is different from dimmer, which would be the second one. Because that's intensity, so intensity dimmer. You've got these a little bit of creative imagination here looking at these labels. Colour spelled incorrectly, because it should have a U in it, because I'm British. 4 is our gobos, so let's load a gobo. There is it, there we are. And you see we have got all the rotation commands in here as well, so we can look at those later. And then we've got pan. Tilt. And then I'm going to lead the others. So we just got those 6 functions. Now these functions are labelled function 1, function 2. That's no good. So we need to change this. Function name is what is going to get called in the blueprints that we're creating. So I'm just going to name them the same as the attribute, just to keep things simple. So shutter is going to be called shutter. Dimmer is called dimmer. Colour, it's called colour, spelt correctly with a U. Can't bring myself to type it in the American way. Gobo is gobo. Pan is pan, and tilt is tilt. Right. So now we have all those labelled. Now, if you're trying to understand what the difference is between these things, the attribute is Unreal has worked out algorithms or protocols that control how a light behaves. So a dimmer will turn on and off the intensity of a fixture. It doesn't matter what we name it. We can name it bananas and it will still control the intensity. The name is for us so we can find things later. This can or can't be useful. It depends on what you're trying to control. So for instance, you might have a light that's got 6 cells in it. All the cells are dimmers, but you've got cell 1, cell 2, cell 3, cell 4, cell 5, cell 6. So you might have your name cells 1 to 6, but the attribute they're controlling is all dimmers. So that's what that is. Just double checking, is anything else I need to change here? This is where we can change to 16-bit if you need to change 16-bit. I don't know any lights that use 24-bit yet, but it's there if you ever need it. And a default value. This is quite handy for pan and tilt in particular, right? Because I mentioned this earlier, 127 sits you in the middle. So we could put that in there, and that creates a default value for that fixture. So that the tilt and the pan is always central. We can also set this later in our variables, and we might do that as well just to demonstrate how we can do it both ways. So we now create a fixture. That's like setting up on the lighting desk. It's now a patchable object. It's going to hit save, just in case I have a crash or anything. And now I'm going to move across to fixture patch. You see how this is very left to right, this workflow. It's nice and simple once you think about moving away across. So here is our universe that we're looking at, the universe 1. Unreachable input ports, that's fine because we haven't got an input port loaded. It's wondering why we wouldn't want to have an input port when we're patching. It doesn't know that's because we're actually building a lighting desk where we're concerned about the patch being used as an output. So we're going to add a fixture. We can create a new fixture type. It'll take us back and we do it again. But the fixture we just created, the mania, is there. So let's load the mania. It's on universe 1 and it's addressed itself from 1 to 6. The mode we can select. We've only got one mode because we only created one mode. So that's there. Receive DMX editor. That allows you to check that it's working in the editor itself, which is handy when you're trying to just check something's working. So we do that. The entity name, we can name it again now, so we can create another name for it, because if you've got multiple, you might have Mania 1, Mania 2, Mania 3. You might want to call it your channel numbers. But that's all there is to do there. We can give it a tag if we need to. We can change the colour of it, how it looks in the editor, or how it looks up here. There we go. So we're going to hit save again. And that is now a patched object. So the last thing I'm going to show you in this lesson is how to load a fixture that's already exists, right, from the GDTF website. So we go back to fixture types, do the same thing again, new fixture type. I don't know what I'm going to find yet, so I'm going to leave that blank. We're going to find a fixture and then call it whatever it is we find. So we're going to import something here. So we need a GDTF format. If you haven't heard me say it correctly, because I'm waffling it, GDTF. It's General Device Type Format. It was created as an open source format for conventions for lighting fixtures. So all of the attributes I've just put into the Unreal editor, we shouldn't have to do, because in theory, it should exist on the GDTF website. It's a little bit political because some manufacturers endorsed it, some didn't, so some are on there, some aren't. The ones that endorsed it have calibrated and verified their own products, which is great. The ones that haven't, they may have been built by people who don't know what they're doing. People like me. So I might have created a fixture, because you can build your own fixture, imported it into library. I could have made mistakes. I could have, put the attributes the wrong way around, put it up there and said, yeah, it's fine. I checked it. I've used it on my show. And actually it's wrong. So there's no way of really being sure if a custom built fixture by somebody is correct or not. We're going to go find a fixture. We're going to look for something that's appropriate. It's a really big library, because of course anybody can make a fixture on here, and you will find copies of things. So let's just take Chauvet as an example. I have no idea. Actually, maybe there's another option here, but let me go back. Manufacturers. So yeah, we can upload it by manufacturers only, or manufacturers and users, so you can see which ones are good, which ones are bad. Yeah, I've gone too far now, I can't go back. There we go, let's try Martin Professional. Because you'll see user versions of the same lights as the manufacturers have created, which is worrying. So let's take a Mac Ultra Wash. There we go, this one's been made by Martin Professional, so we know it's good. There is a 3D version of it. This is highlighted if the vision was tested in real life. Please mark if you have tested it and found it to be good. So this is great. This is a way of verifying. So Martin has said, yes, we've tested it and checked it works. And I could test it as well and say, yes, and I tested it in real life. It really does work. 3D file. It's been made by the manufacturer, which is great. And this is the release version, which is also a good sign. So I could favourite that. Give it a rating. Only 3 people have. I'm just going to download it. So I click here, download the file. Loads of information here. I could create my own version of it. I could change things around, but that's effectively that light. So now I know what I've got. I've got a Martin Professional. What was it? I've forgotten already. A Mac Aura Professional. No, Mac Ultra Wash. Not Mac Aura. So I'm going to go back to my fixture type that I created, DMX fixture type. I'm going to call it a Mac. Actually, I'm going to do it properly. Mac Ultra Wash. No spaces. Not doing spaces is a good idea in anything you label, because it confuses some programming tools if you've got spaces. DMX import, and I need to import this object, but it's still not there. Where is it? Well, it's in my downloads folder and it's not in the project. It needs to be in the project. So we're going to import it into the project. So I'm going to open my content library. I'm going to put it in my DMX folder because it's a DMX fixture. Now I could right click here and go to import to, and to my game DMX folder. But what I'm actually going to do is click and drag it out of my downloads folder. So I'm going to do that out of shot so you don't see all my files. So I'm just going to drag it over, right? So I've clicked it in my downloads folder and I'm dragging it into the content library. So you won't let me put it anywhere else. And then I've got a little importer tool called there. So what do you want to do? Import the XML, import textures, models. I mean, there's nothing like that in here. This one might have a model actually because it's a because it was included a 3D file apparently, but it's fine. We've got that light there now. Okay, it exists. All that data that we saw on the website. So all of this, all of these wonderful numbers, all the settings, that is all contained in that file. So now if we click on the DMX import, it will see our fixture. Let's bring that in. And that's now creates all of our settings for us. So if we go to DMX category, what sort of light is it? It is a moving head, I'm guessing. Mode settings. Let's click on it. Does it do anything? There we go. It's got different modes attached to it. That's all been set up. So DMX modulator. Oh, actually, no. This is part of Unreal. This is nothing to do with the Martin fixture. This is an option they give you. So I'm just going to delete that. I think that's it. I think that's it done. So there's my fixture, just created like that, just by importing that GTTF. If we now go to the patch, I can add a fixture, and there it is, Mac Ultra Wash. If I click and drag that, ooh, no, why is it not putting it in? Try and choose a different address, auto assign. It's got me a little error message there. The patches fixture has no modes. Okay, let's go back, let's check. So add a mode. Well, that is interesting, isn't it? It hasn't actually added any of the functions. Why has it done that? So I've added the GTTF file. Let's try adding a mode setting like this. Let's see what happens. Set none. No. How curious. That should have worked. Save it. No. So that should have created all of those modes and attributes without having to do anything. Let's try a different fixture. Let's see if maybe there's a different one that will work. I'm going back to my GTTF files. I'm going to go to Claypacky. So here you can sort of see an example of what I was talking about. Some people support, some people don't. This was created by the manufacturer. I'm going to download it. I'm going to click and drag it into my folder. Oh, I need my content browser open first. Click and drag it in. Import. And now I'm going to choose Claypacky Sharpie. There we go, that one works. Isn't that strange? Well, there you go. Can't always work. So I'm going to change the name of this now to Sharpie Plus, because that's what that is. And it's still a moving head. It might be because I have this set to moving head and it's not, maybe it's a wash. I don't know. I don't know why that wasn't working, but anyway, you can now see what it's done. It has got all of the attributes and it has mapped it against what it thinks the name should be. So we'll find these names later on. And I'll leave it in there in case we're looking, but there's a couple of sections there on color, which obviously maybe the virtual channels, I don't know, but it hasn't assigned it to anything. Same thing for gobos and animation wheels. They're probably features which the light has that Unreal isn't actually set up to run, or it needs to be manually told what's what. But it will now be a patchable fixture. See that it's put it in. It's still got the name Ultra Wash. If I save, will it update? No, so I'm going to delete that. There you go, and reload it, Sharpie Plus. There we go. And now I've got the full fixture and I can move it around and address it. And that will now be outputting once we tell it what to do. We've got some modes, just standard. It's a Sharpie Plus. We could try changing it from Mania if we wanted to. We can change its starting address. We can set it to auto assign, which means if I add more, well, in fact, actually, I need to do it by copying and pasting. If I go Control Paste, the auto assigns, it just automatically bunches up the DMX addresses. Or I can manually address it. I can stick it on a different universe. And if you want to find it, we'll have to go to, I've done that to the mania, haven't I? Go to the next universe, and there it is. So, done it again. So there we go. That is how we patch fixtures in Unreal. I hope that was useful, not too unbearable when I got stuck.